Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wholehearted Loving. I'm Stephanie.
Hello, I'm Georgiana.
Thanks for being here again. We are going to talk today about caretaking, emotional and literal caretaking. But first, we will do a body practice to sink into the moment here, into our bodies, before we connect with each other and with this podcast. So we're just going to do some breathing with sounding today. What do I want to say about this? Breathing is something we do all the time. Sometimes we bring attention to it. Sometimes we don't. It's a powerful tool for state change and soothing and moving energy. And sound also is great for moving energy. So we're just going to do 3 deep breaths at your own pace and releasing a sound. If you want to move your body on the exhale as well, you can do that. So, breathing. There's often a lot of noise when we're together and when we're apart. A lot of I think we talked about that last week, the breathing that we do for regulating. I don't know if I mentioned to you a couple weeks ago, I was at a movie and there was a violent scene that occurred, and I immediately went inward and started dealing with my emotions about it and breathing deeply. And a woman beside me was doing the same thing across the aisle. Breathing through.
Yeah. It's so helpful. It's simple and helpful. And I like the idea of sounding. And with my first breath, I noticed I wanted to keep it a little bit small and internal. So it was like a humming, like an internal humming. And I got to feel the vibration of that. And then the second one was maybe just a little, just let out whatever weird, silly sound there was. And I remember a time where if someone would have suggested that I make a sound, I mean, no, I don't do that. I don't look silly. I don't look stupid. I don't sound weird. And I am just going to breathe quietly. And it was so important for me to practice making weird sounds and hearing myself make weird sounds, because I had been conditioned and programmed to sit pretty, say the right thing at all times, right? Not interrupt. And that programmed me into someone who was so careful, so locked down when it came to using my voice and sharing my opinion and what was important to me and what worked for me and what didn't work for me. So this simple practice of making sound on an exhale, that was such a catalyst for me to embrace my voice and speak my truth and let my voice be in a space with people, share my opinion, all these things I used to be so terrified to do for, the fear of being judged.
Oh, man. We are medicine for each other, lady. Wow. No wonder you attracted me into your life. I just make sounds and am big and loud and say all the things.
Yeah, and I think that's why I was drawn to you. And it was interesting because I think maybe at a different point in my life, or you have just the right mix of that I was drawn to you, because I was like, oh, who is this person who's interesting and I like her and she feels so free and being expressive? Because I think there was a time in my life where I would be around people who are more carefree and using their voice and exuberance and energy. And I would just think shut the F up. You're so freaking annoying. And really it's because, maybe there was an element that was over the top and too much for me and not helpful, but really is because I was terrified of taking up space, being exuberant, having a voice, being seen, right? So anytime I saw people like that, I was like, you suck. You're what's wrong with the world. But when I met you, I think I felt a softness in you, a kindness in you, an intelligence in you, wisdom in you, and you were exuberant and took up space and just said the things and made the sounds and made the weird sounds. And to see someone who I had respect for and also held and lived these traits and values that I valued and embraced these other ones that were totally foreign to me and I was afraid of and always thought, I will be less liked if I embrace those ones. It was so helpful for me to see, like those are beautiful things. What, why am I cutting that part of myself off?
Oh, yay. Oh, what a gift to have met. We've talked in the past about having met at Conscious Relationship Training, which is sometimes about making weird sounds and doing weird things. And it feels like such a relief for me. I'm like, finally, the people are making the sounds. The people are saying the things, the truth is coming out. I value that a lot.
Yeah. Remember that exercise at Conscious Relationship Training, Roach or whatever it's called?
Yeah.
Essentially, like you're surrounded by a circle of people and like see people you do not know. You're meeting for like the first time and you're asked to like, or invited to go in the middle of circle and like, just, I don't like, how do you describe that? What you're being asked to do? I don't even know the word.
You shake your whole body and you release everything and you make every crazy sound. You act like a cockroach that's been flipped over and is freaking out.
Exactly. And I remember standing on the side in the circle thinking, God help me. Like, there's no way I want to do that. That's awful. Like, that's so awful. And it's funny to think of it now because in the time since, I've done it many times and like sometimes in between where it was so new that it felt really uncomfortable, but I knew that it was the kind of discomfort that was important for me to lean into because it would free up a different way of being for me. And then there was also times doing it where it felt so fun and so free because I had come to that place of allowing myself to be that and not judge it for anything. It didn't start that way though. It was like, no way. And then the part of me that ended up doing it was the deeply internalized part of me that was the good schoolgirl. Like,
who had to do it.
You have to do this. The teacher says you have to do it. Well, he never said we had to do it, but in my mind, I was like, well, I have to do this. Right. And there was maybe, it was coupled a bit with this will be good for me, but mostly I have to do this.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, there's people who can't. There's people who just cannot or won't. Like they either just won't step into the circle or they'll step in and do this really rigid or performative not release thing. And that, the point is that it's a release. I assume I volunteered to go first. That just seems delightful to me. I'm delighted to do that. I love how different everybody is. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And seeing people who had developed more comfort in doing it, or maybe just naturally feel a bit more comfortable doing it, was so helpful for me to see like, oh, this is what it can look like. And also to see, like, I don't know if you remember, like once we got into the higher levels and these things were easier for us to do, to basically just allow ourselves to be human was easier. You could see the people who were really comfortable, who just felt like this is just me expressing myself in the moment. And there was a joy that, that they exuded, that I was like, oh, what is that they get to experience? And that was really neat to see. Oh, these people live in this spaciousness of being themselves that I do not give myself permission to live in. Right. I live in this rigid box of you need to act this way, speak this way, say these things to be liked and respected. And they just had something in them that I'm like, I want that. I want to be able to live like that. And that sort of also encouraged me to do the thing and try anyways.
That's super powerful. Group work and like representation, being able to see that there are so many ways other than our ways, and that people can be all the things that we're afraid to be and still be loved.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And still loved.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And still loved. That was so powerful in this group work, because you could do the thing that felt the scariest to do, say the thing that felt the scariest to say. In some cases, these are things that people or myself had held on to for decades. And then to finally build the courage to say them and be seen in that way by people. And what we experienced was that people were still there and felt even more deeply connected to you. What a life-changing kind of experience, because most of us have lived thinking, if I expose this part of myself, if I show this part and say these things, act this way, I'm going to be, left out, ridiculed, abandoned. And we got to experience the absolute opposite was true. And that is so healing.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes me think of caretaking, like what you're describing right now, this spending a lifetime hiding ourselves is our way of taking care of ourselves. Like, this is often the most self-care people will give themselves, is to hide and to protect their hearts from things. Something you said earlier about vibrations felt important to me. The sounding that we did, vibrations going through your body that you can make yourself are life-giving and soothing activities. Humming, changing, like literally changing your vibration inside your body. You might think of it as frequencies or energy or whatever it is. That's one tool you can do right now to take care of yourself and your feelings inside.
Yeah, this is actually a really neat way to look at it when you speak about vibration as a way to take care of ourselves, because there are many different vibrations if you experiment. And that's why chanting and mantras and like lots of different lineages have their form of vibration, like sound healing, right? If you play with that, you'll discover which type of vibrations feel really good in your body. And that reminds me of having power, feeling powerful in our own lives, where we create a vibration that feels good for us. Whereas in so many interactions in life, someone might say something or do something or bring a certain type of energy, and our body responds a certain way. A different kind of vibration or sensation is created based on that interaction and this energy that someone's bringing forth into your space. And how amazing is it that we can also change and be deliberate about the type of vibrations and energy and sensations we create for ourselves. And that's not all dependent on how we feel, is not all dependent on what other people bring into our space.
Yeah, we bring ourselves into every space we enter. I think that's really important to like actively manage, so easy to get swept up in other people's energies and anxieties. And this is why we do these practices at the beginning of each episode. We take a minute and at the end to do this. And speaking for myself, I've been practicing this for 7 years, just trying to be present in my body and bringing myself with me wherever I go. And it makes a difference. It really does. Yeah.
I like that you're telling people that I was saying, I like that you're telling people that you've been practicing for 7 years and you're enjoying the fruits of your labor, because sometimes people think that well, I did it once. Shouldn't I feel better? And it's a good reminder that it's a continual practice. And what you feel helps and feels good in one season of life, one chapter of life, is going to shift over time. And you get to continuously get to know yourself better and better as you grow and change and evolve. And that to me is really fun.
Yeah, definitely. Also, what you were saying about other people and external things affecting our energy. I feel like I want to talk about that a little bit more. I think we all know that there's people who feel better to us than certain people. You know, there's people in spaces where we feel like we want to be. Maybe moods. I know we talked a while ago about as we get to know ourselves a bit better and recognize our feelings and needs, we reach out, we extend to specific people. We become more discerning in how we get support and what kind of energies we want to be around. And I think this links in with caretaking a lot, because there are going to be people in your life who are just there. They're just the people who are in your life. Maybe they don't feel good to your body, but that's what you're used to. So that interaction that you're having with them and with yourself is going to be all about managing these internal feelings you're having and their internal feelings. You know, caretaking is all about managing other people's feelings for them and their fears and anxieties for them. And the real inner work game is managing that for ourselves so that we can recognize when it's happening for other people and be loving and supportive without taking that on completely.
Yeah. And like when we are connected with ourselves and our bodies, we know we are clear in how much capacity we have to help someone with their fears and anxieties and overwhelm.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But if we're not checked into how we're feeling on that particular day in that moment, we can fall into old habits of like, well, let me put my needs and my feelings aside and let me tend to you.
Mm-hmm.
And we might stay in that habit pattern for so long that we become resentful. And that's not actually what we're wanting. It's not what the other person is wanting.
Yeah. And we might not even recognize that in our bodies. You know, the more I unwind and decondition all these patterns that I've grown accustomed to, just the life that I thought was normal, the more I can recognize which aspects actually promote health and energy in my body, what thought patterns and interactions and behaviors cause me to be more energized and creative and more connected to myself, feeling spacious instead of stressed out. And everybody runs these patterns and we're all interacting with them constantly. So the ability to be self-possessed, to be safe in yourself and to self-soothe and regulate really is like, I need that to interact with other people. I just need it.
Yeah, we all need that. We're just not all aware of it. And we wonder why our relationships feel difficult and challenging and complicated.
Yeah.
Right. When you say stuff, when you say self-possessed, what do you mean? Because I think of like the Chucky doll.
Oh,
and I
an
don't think
act of
that's what you
possession
mean.
by a demon. I mean, you could, yeah. So like, you could also think of inspiration as being possession by a demon, I suppose. Self-possession means that you have your own back. You know, that's, you know what you need and how to give it to yourself. You're not being swayed unduly by other people's energies or opinions, you know?
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I grew up in the 80s, late 70s, 80s. So I have visuals of Chucky, the doll.
Creepy. Creepy doll.
Your description of self-possession is much better.
Yeah.
Your description of self-possession is much more loving than what came to mind for me.
Interesting. Yeah. That's a good point. We all make words mean very different things, and that's going to affect all of our interactions too. Hmm. So I kind of thought we could talk a bit about.
So,
Oh, yeah. So.
yeah, let's flow with you. I don't actually see you on my screen.
Oh, yeah.
So
I think our
I'm
internet's a bit
focusing very
wacky.
hard on hearing your voice.
Oh, weird. Yeah, you're all
That's
pixely
okay.
too, and I think there's a lag, but we'll manage. I kind of thought we could talk about some ways that we either do or have caretaken people in our lives. So I think it's a buzzword now, caretaking. You know, I'm a caretaker, I'm a doormat, I'm an overgiver, all of these things, all of the ways we lose ourselves in relationship, all of the ways we are possessed by others instead of having our little Jackie doll self-possession.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
so, I mean, I've done that completely in relationships. Like I've just said, we've been doing this work really intensely for 7 years. And prior to that, every relationship I can think of was completely consumed by either making sure people thought about me in certain ways or taking care of other people's needs. You know, what are other people worried about? How can I solve all the problems of the world? How can I help everybody feel better?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think a lot of us have found that we caretake in this way in all of our relationships or many of our relationships, and they all have like maybe a different flavor but have a common thread. And I want us to, as we look at how have we caretaken in the past, meaning how have I neglected me and my needs and my feelings for the sake of bringing more comfort to another person, or what I assume would be more comfortable for another person. It doesn't mean we were bad or wrong or messed up. It just means we wanted to be loved and accepted, and we wanted to feel connection, or we wanted to feel helpful and supported. And yet we didn't know quite how to do that dance in a way that honors ourself and the other person.
Mm-hmm.
And so it gets lopsided. Right?
Yeah. Well, I think I also was managing my anxiety and my feelings of worthlessness, you know, having to create value. And this unconscious feeling that I didn't have value caused a lot of anxiety that I needed to quell by worrying about everybody else's feelings instead of my own, because I didn't know how to feel them or have them. I didn't even know they were there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It makes me think of a body practice. Maybe I'll save it for the end, that I love for helping us bring awareness to, am I connected to what's going on with me, or is my energy gone outward and I'm in someone else's business?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I was in lots of other people's business.
Yeah.
Put it that way. Uninvited, unsolicited, all these assumptions I made about what they needed to feel better because I wanted to feel comfortable.
Right. Busybody energy.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's like stereotypical busybodies that we can picture maybe from like sitcoms or things like that, or like a nosy auntie or something who's always in everybody's business. But there's so many subtle ways that we do that. If we're not an outward busybody, there's so many subtle ways that we get involved in other people's business and, unconsciously try to control our own feelings instead of caring for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I invite us all to bring more awareness, just to notice where your mind is at. Is your mind focused on how am I feeling? What am I needing? What would feel good for me right now? What would be something I could do to move me further along in the direction of what matters to me? Or am I in my mind trying to figure out how someone feels and what they need and what I should do so that they can feel better? Like, even as I say it, I'm leaning forward and the energy and the pace picks up because it has that kind of feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I found myself in that energy all the time. When I started paying attention, I was like, I'm always in this energy of how is everyone else?
Mm. It's
Mhm.
exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, they haven't asked for our help most of the time, and they maybe don't want it.
Mhm. And by the way,
By
just
the way.
note.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And that I find that that has caused a lot of, friction and tension and resentment because, going both ways, either I was the caretaker and then I'd be disgruntled and resentful and finally say something. And when I say finally say something, it's probably some explosive, not helpful way of saying it because just the lid blows off at some point. And they're like, but I never asked you to do that. Or like, I thought you did it because you wanted to. And I've been on both sides of that.
Yeah.
And I remember being on the opposite side, like where someone else is trying to caretake me and feeling so offended and then like just annoyed because I'm like, now you're all annoyed, but I never asked you to do that. And now you're pissed at me. Like, what the heck?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a creepy feeling. I mean, the more I learn myself and have done this work, the more everything just comes down to simple presence and letting your loved ones know that you love them and that's it. That's basically it. I'm here.
Mm-hmm. I'm here and this feels good for me to engage in right now. And this doesn't,
Yeah.
right? That took me a long time to even know for myself. I'm so disconnected from what actually feels good for me.
Yeah.
Um, because my caretaking was helping me feel good.
Yeah.
But really, it was because I didn't know how to be with discomfort,
Yeah.
right? Of seeing other people upset or unhappy or disappointed. So I'm like, well, I better do something
Mm-hmm.
to change that so I can feel better. Because if they're happy, I'm happy. Like I remember being in relationships where people would say, it makes me the happiest when you're happy. And like something always felt a little off about that. Like there was a part of me that wanted to feel loved and important. That was like, I love that. Thank you. And
Mm-hmm.
there was a part of me that was like, ooh, that feels like a lot of pressure. Like on
Yeah.
you and on me. And I would really like other things in your life to make you feel happy other than just making me feel happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a different kind of possession. Only wanting one thing is like either a really finite problem or a much larger problem. If you only want someone to be happy, something is very wrong. You should want a lot more than that. Life can't just be about somebody else being happy. That is a kind of possession. Like Chucky just wanted to kill people. That's the only thing he wanted, unhealthy.
Yeah. And people don't necessarily think of wanting someone to be happy as unhealthy. But the
Mm-hmm.
reality is that's not a true human experience
Yeah.
because the human experience is full of like happiness and sadness and grief and rage and excitement and disappointment and all the things.
Yeah.
Right. So I'd rather be with someone who says, I want you in this relationship or in this friendship to feel free to be fully human.
Mm-hmm.
That would feel so much better than someone who says, all I want is for you to be happy. I'll do anything to make you happy.
Yeah, in a way, it's a different way of saying I kind of just want you to shut up. you know, I don't want you to ever have any problems again or complaints. I just want you to be delightful.
And and it's gonna seem like it's because I love you so much and I want this greatness for you, but really it's because I'm so uncomfortable with anything other than you being happy all the time.
Yeah. What a world.
Yeah. Aren't we funny humans?
We are. Yeah. So, what are some ways that you have been a caretaker in your life? And as
I
I
feel
want to
like,
also say that we're not talking about like giving care to people is different than a caregiver. That's actually funny. We call it a caretaker or a caregiver. That's kind of an
yeah.
interesting difference.
Well, I think it's like any great quality, like caring for people is a beautiful quality to have, a beautiful trait, a beautiful thing to do. It's a great superpower. And when we take it too far to an extreme, we lose ourselves and we
Yeah.
lose the balance. right? So it's like, how can I care for you and care for me at the same time?
And you really have to care for yourself for that to work. When I
Mm-hmm.
think back on the caretaking I used to do, there was no love for me. That was not in any way my focus. And big surprise, the result was that there was no focus on care for me.
Right. Yeah. And it's just such an easy dynamic to fall into and then get stuck in.
Yeah.
Right. And I find that like when I think about relationships and future relationship, I hope that I meet someone who would catch that. If they felt that I was like leaning too far over and had lost myself a little bit and was prioritizing their needs more than was necessary and neglecting my own, that they'd be like, hey, what's happening is all okay, right? Like, I just noticed that, you know, I want you to make sure you're well cared for too in this.
Mm-hmm.
And not someone, I don't want to be with someone who wants it to be one direction caring for,
Yeah. Yeah.
That doesn't feel good.
Not at all. So you're describing a future man who
Mm-hmm.
can feel and report on the energy that he's experiencing. And
Yeah,
like,
and notice it. And also like in the moments, and this is what I would want for my friendships too, right? In the moments where they might say, hey, gee, like I love you and you're doing so much to try to help me and I want to make sure like you're okay. Like, are
mm-hmm,
you resourced to be saying yes to this? Right. And just
mm-hmm,
have that sort of extra double check layer.
yeah,
And that
we
would
do
feel really
that really
nice.
well for each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things I love about our relationship and what we were talking about this morning. My caretaking also, so I've got like an extraordinary amount of like go get the thing done energy. So my caretaking also has those qualities. Like I'm thinking about an ex-boyfriend who could have been happier in his life. So I'm like, well, amazing. Let me pay the mortgage and put you through school and you don't have to work. And all of this was just to try to generate some sort of feeling of comfort and certainty for myself. And, left him feeling like emasculated and useless and like was not helpful for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
A force. Our caretaking can really be a force, and that's a huge amount of energy that we could be directing to caring for ourselves and
Mm-hmm.
spreading it around.
Yeah.
Things more
And I think,
balanced.
when it comes to this balance of caretaking, it's really important to stay connected to how your body feels, because if we're connected to body, we're going to notice the shifts when it's become lopsided, right? But if we're not connected, we stay lopsided.
Yeah.
And that's really draining and doesn't create for a healthy dynamic in a relationship.
Yeah, that's incredibly important, the feelings aspect. And I know for myself, I'm a really big feelings person, and I really didn't want that to be the case. And I come from a family where that's not so much happening. So there's no guidebook, and the idea of feeling your feelings more felt repellent and counterproductive. And like, that's not going to make me any money. Why would I do that? And it is the only way that we can notice when things are off in our life is
Yeah.
feeling it.
Yeah. You asked what are some examples of how I've caretaken other
Mm-hmm.
people. I have a slew of them. I feel like they're on different levels. I think on one level where it was like so prevalent in my everyday life to the point where it didn't occur to me at all it was caretaking, was hearing like just things that would come out of my mouth would be like, oh, whatever you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, does that feel good for you? What do you want? What do you like? Or things I would say like, I don't mind either way. I don't care. I don't really have a preference, or I don't know. And those are all my ways of hoping that I wouldn't offend someone or disappoint them because what I wanted wasn't what they wanted. So I'm like, if I just never have an opinion and never have a preference, hopefully that means the other person is going to always be happy. And then they will stick around, because if they're always happy and they know that I'm the person that makes them always happy, they're going to love me and they're going to stay.
Oh man, I get it. Same question for you and all of the listeners is, how is that going for you?
Well, good thing I don't do it anymore. But I didn't even know I was doing it. It felt so normal to me.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't really until I was discovering with my voice what is actually true for me. Like, and it wasn't that I really knew what was true for me and would just locked it down. It was that I didn't even know. And I work with people like that all the time. They're like, people say I need to speak up for what I need. What happens if I don't even know what I need? And people feel a lot of shame around that. And I like to remind them that, like, it makes sense to not know what you need. If you've been conditioned and you've tried to protect yourself to put your needs way at the bottom in order to find connection or safety in your environment, right? In your relationships. So before you can speak up for your needs and have the boundaries, you need to give yourself space to explore what feels good, what doesn't, what's a yes, what's a body yes, what's a body no, what's a body I'm not sure yet, or what's a body I still need some time, what's a body maybe.
Yeah. And exposure is how we get that, right? That's, again, back to the power of group work, is seeing what options are available and trying them on, trying them on in mixed company, seeing what the responses are.
Yeah. But definitely the soundtrack of my life, a decade ago was, I don't know, what do you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, where do you want to go?
Yeah. Whatever you want is fine.
Yeah, whatever you want is fine.
And sometimes that's true. And we get an almost immediate body response. When we say, oh, whatever, anything works, and then somebody suggests something to us, there's probably a yes or no right there. I'll have anything for dinner, but none of the things that you want to suggest to me.
Yeah, that's the funniest thing. I think that's the truest test, right? Of like when people suggest something, you're like, okay.
That's a good one. The tone. Sure. Yeah.
I always had a hard time with sure. I've had to build a new relationship with sure, because I always read that as like someone is like just saying it because they don't want to say no.
Hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah.
My ex had that same thing, and I was so confused. I remember I'd be like, sure, and get this annoyed response. And eventually I found out that there was someone in their life in the past for whom sure meant like, I'm really not happy about this and I'm going to be nasty about it, kind of thing.
Yeah, but I'll do it anyways. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like, sure, I made sure mean, oh, so you don't really want to spend time with me, but you'll just do it anyways. Like, so because hard. I made it mean like, if you really wanted to spend time with me, why wouldn't you say yes? Of course. Yeah. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, but man. To some people, I guess sure does mean that.
For sure. Every word has a different meaning for everyone. And like our moods, all of these words have different meanings. I met once at this event a woman who had actually ended up writing a story in a book about this. She didn't discover till she was in her 60s that when she delivered some hard truth that was happening for her or whatever, all of the sympathetic sounds that she would hear, like the, oh, she took as this like pitying judgment. And so all of this, like her whole life, people have been trying to sympathize and give her care that she took in this totally other way.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Right? We never know these things unless we talk about them and like get to know our feelings and share.
Yes. That's why I love like the phrase, like, and the self-checking question of what am I making this mean?
Yeah.
Right? What am I making sure mean? because I sure made it mean a lot of things that were not always accurate. Right.
Yeah.
So that's one way. Another caretaking thing was when I finally did have the courage to speak up in relationship and say that hurt my feelings or I didn't like that. To be met with the response of, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And then immediately after that was, "I'm such a terrible person. I'm such a jackass. I'm such an asshole. Like, yeah, I suck." And I was like, now what do I do?
Right. Yeah.
And like that really empathic, caring part of me all of a sudden had to jump out of that feeling of, I want to share with you what's going on with me. And I want to ask you for something. And I want to tend to myself and our connection in this way, to all of a sudden I'm like, oh, now you feel terrible about yourself that you did this thing that I found hurtful. And now I feel like I have to make you not feel like such a terrible person. Oh, it wasn't so bad. And I understand where it came from. And like, you meant well. And, like, it's not that big of a deal. And like, I did that so much,
Oh,
like
yeah.
so much,
Yeah.
where immediately, like, I was caretaking the other person and not wanting them to feel so bad and be so hard on themselves. And then all of a sudden I remember, like, I'd hang up the phone or the interaction would be over. And I'm like, what happened there? Like, and something felt off, but I couldn't see it clearly enough yet because it was such an ingrained pattern. Like, until years later when that relationship wasn't a relationship anymore. And I was like, oh, that's what would happen.
Mm-hmm.
And because I grew up in a family where I didn't hear apologies that often from my parents, I became an adult in relationship, an intimate relationship, like just like a sponge for the I'm sorry. So the second I heard the I'm sorry, I'm like, oh, okay. Right. But I didn't realize it was followed up with, now we're living in your shame hole.
Yeah.
And there is sort of this expectation, almost this energetic expectation, that now I'm going to tend to your shame.
Mm-hmm.
And
This
now,
is part of the problem of not having a regular clearing and feelings practice, right? If we're not actively sharing our feelings and the problems that are coming up for us as they're coming up, we wait for someone else to present that stage for us, And so as soon as you come to me and say, hey, I'm feeling this kind of way, I'm like, amazing, it's feelings time. Let me now dump all my feelings in response, I think that's a really serious learned skill that takes a lot of time to unwind, to just be with somebody else's feelings, to let them have their experience, to not need to do anything about it, to not make it an opportunity to share your stuff.
This is the thing, is like, shame is just, it's so dangerous. And we all, I think, have experienced shame and different levels of shame. And I would say, if I have like any one piece of advice, it's to like practice meeting your shame with compassion and exploring where it came from and doing the healing work around that, because it is not possible to sit across from someone and their truth and hold it with care when all we have is this big lump of shame in our bodies and in the space between us and the other person. Because our immediate, where we go, the second we hear someone's boundary or how someone's feeling, it goes to, I suck as a person. And when we're in the I suck as a person, it's very hard to still be open-hearted to what's going on for the other person who has come to you wanting to share their truth with you.
Yeah, completely. And I think shame has such a childlike quality. So it's one of the more vulnerable feelings, I think, that people experience, because it brings you back to this place where you were so reliant on other people, and you didn't have the tools and the resources, and all the feelings felt really big. It puts us right back into a place where we were when we didn't yet have synapses firing that we needed to like actually get from here to there. And we were so under-resourced.
Yeah.
Making a practice of this as an adult when you have more resources is another life-changing activity that I'll recommend to
Yeah,
everybody.
it's really big. And I remember how it showed itself through the boys when they were little. I remember Kai, when he would do something that like just really wasn't helpful, maybe it was hurtful to someone, he would run away. He would run away like immediately. And, you know, I think mainstream parenting at the time might have suggested to me, like, go after your kid and discipline him and tell him how not okay it was the first thing he did, and certainly how not okay it was that he ran away when you're trying to tell him that that was not okay. Luckily enough, I had other voices, you know, in my head when it came to a different way of parenting. And there was like my gut intuition of how I wanted to handle it. And there was I want to rewrite generations of patterns in how I want to handle something like this. And I would make my way to him, and I would say probably something like, "Hey, bud, it's okay what happened, right? Like, are you feeling bad about it, right?" Or something like that. And like I said, mommy still loves you. It's okay, right?
Mm.
And then the tears would get to come because like he just felt so bad in that moment. He didn't know what to do with it. And when I was able to meet him with softness and acceptance, then he could let that stuff go and then not feel like this bad kid.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you know, and then, you know, once he's settled, I could help him see, like, sometimes we do that when we're afraid someone's going to take our toy, right? And that's okay. And we need to practice doing that differently, but it doesn't make you bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're just learning. We're just practicing. And sometimes when you parent that way, you question, you're like, am I being too soft on my kids, right? Society will tell you you're being too soft on your kids. Your extended family might have, you know, opinions. You're being too soft on your kids. But now what I see when my kids do something, you know, in the spur of the moment, they talk to me in a way that's rude and disrespectful. They come back on their own, in their own time to me, and they seek me out. And they'll say, like Kai recently is, sorry, mom, like I overreacted, you know, like I sort of blew up there. Sorry. Mm-hmm. And that's taken a long time. He's turning 13 soon. And like in the years between 2 years old to 13, like I wasn't really seeing much evidence that that style of parenting was giving me what I was hoping for. But I just needed to like have the faith and trust my gut. And now what I see is two boys who are able to say, I'm sorry. And it's not a panicked, I'm sorry. It's not a, I'm a terrible person. And so I'm really, really sorry, mom. You know, it's just, didn't really handle that the best way. I don't want to be yelling at you. Sorry, mom. Right?
Self-possession.
Self-possession. So,
yeah.
So some of us haven't had the opportunity to have our shame met with love and acceptance and care. And so we just stuff it down some more. And then the new layers come and we stuff that down some more. And then we try to be in relationship with people. And it's clunky. And then you shame yourself even more because you're like, I suck so much at relationship. You don't suck at relationship. You're just having a hard time holding shame.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Which makes sense.
So,
it's no wonder you're having a hard time holding shame. Mm-hmm. Whoever taught you to hold it, you know? Who mentioned
on your own.
You're still loved while you felt that way?
Mm-hmm.
I have a very vivid memory of my first experience of deep shame. Mm-hmm. In daycare, in preschool. I was coughing. I was maybe choking on something, or there was something in my throat. And one of the staff, I remember the feeling of panic. I was like, and one of the staffs asked me if I wanted something to drink. And I just kind of nodded through this coughing. And then she asked me what I wanted to drink. And I like lost my mind. Like, how would I know? It just doesn't matter. Anything, you know, like, and I think I said something to that effect, or that was the energy of like, don't be an idiot. Anything. And then immediately, just like, was it Luca or Kai that runs away? I ran and I hid in a little wooden race car. And that is where the memory ends, in the race car. Yeah, I was mean to a lady. You know, I snapped at a lady, like immediate, complete shame. I can't imagine that much of my shame was ever faced until started doing this work.
Yeah. What do you think you needed sitting in that race car?
Exactly what you said. Like, oh, are you afraid that you said something mean, or that, you know, whatever it is you might be afraid of, and that it's okay. You're not bad or wrong. You know, everything at the root of all of this shame is feeling like you're bad and wrong and going to be kicked out of the tribe.
Yeah. Right. So
Yeah.
if you've ever found yourself saying or doing things that haven't been that helpful in relationship, this is your reminder to be gentle with yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
When shame softens into self-acceptance, that's when we have the capacity to like meet people where they're at, meet ourselves with what's true.
Yeah. Real clarity and different feelings in your body.
Yeah. I wanted to share one little piece that's really significant that I learned about caretaking. And I don't have the exact data. There's research been done and I forget the exact numbers. But they said babies, and I know for sure it's under 1 year old, but how old specifically, I can't quite remember, but it was young. Babies are already adjusting what they express based on the facial expression and body language of the primary caregiver.
Wow.
Because they can tell what brings someone delight, what brings nurturance, what brings a stone face, what brings like the primary caregiver to turn away. And they sense already what's welcome and what's not.
Wow. Interesting.
And so if you imagine, like, we've been doing that for decades, right? And it's really sad when I think about it, because the moms or like the primary caregivers who can't bring presence to the full expression of their baby, to me, it means it's a mom who's never had that opportunity to be held in that way in her life. So she doesn't know how to do it, or doesn't know the importance of doing it, or there's some medical stuff going on, or mental health stuff going on that's preventing her from being able, or him from being able to bring that presence and warmth and acceptance to that child. And that child is already from infancy adjusting what they show to the world. So it makes sense if you have found yourself for decades of your life hiding parts of your expression, hiding parts of yourself. Right? It doesn't mean you suck. It just means that you learn to protect in that way because it didn't seem like it was welcome.
Yeah.
And now is that rewiring time to see that all parts of you are welcome.
Yeah. I think there's an important nugget in there that's like part of the confusion about caretaking, because we have these sympathetic responses, right? So it's true that bringing joy to someone else also brings us joy. And I think we just hand over everything to that method of being, you know? These are the ways we take care of ourselves even before we're one. We're trying to make things feel a certain way for ourselves. That's intense.
Yeah.
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 So I want people to think about, what are some of the ways that you take care of yourself? What are some of the ways you tend to and care for your own feelings and your own needs? And how much energy, like if you take stock, when I look back on these things, it was all for other people. You know, there was nothing for myself. And that was obvious. You know, the fruits of my labors were everywhere. So I would encourage everyone who's listening or watching to really take a look at that for yourself. How much of your energy, how much of your time is dedicated to care and love for your own well-being directly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Will you walk us through your minding other people's business?
This is the mind your own business practice. So let's feel your butt on the chair or your feet on the ground. And notice your breath. And we'll start by placing our hands on our body. I like to place them sort of on my chest, sort of heart center, but you might choose to place them somewhere else. And when we're here, I want you to feel your hands on your body and notice your breath. And this here is a reminder to care for yourself. And when you're ready, I want you to outstretch your arms in front of you and like wiggle your fingers like you're like putting your hands in a bucket of mush or something. This is what for me symbolizes I'm in someone else's business. I'm like reaching and I got my fingers and hands all in there and I'm no longer connected to me. And then I want you to come back and let your hands land on you again. And feel what that feels like. And again, when you're ready, outstretch the arms, put the attention and energy outward. Give those fingers a wiggle just to really symbolize you in someone's business. And notice how that feels. And sometimes this can feel good to be connected to someone and helping them. And sometimes you might notice, wow, I've been hanging out here for a long time. It might be I've been hanging out here all morning or for the last 6 months or for decades. And then just practice bringing it back. Hands on yourself. And like I said earlier, like life is about being able to do that dance. Like both sides are important in relationship, right? To care for others, to wonder how others are feeling and wonder how they're doing, and also to care for myself and like be curious about how I'm feeling and what I'm needing. And this practice helps me sort of see and notice like where I've been hanging out lately and whether it's in balance or not, and what I might need to do, which way I might need to lean into a little bit more.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
That.
I was in a lot of people's business for a long time.
Oh, yes.
Usually people find themselves in the business of ex-partners after breakups.
Oh.
How are they feeling? What are they doing? I wonder why they left. I wonder why they didn't stay in the relationship. Like all the I wonder why, and I want to figure out why someone does or doesn't do the thing that you want them to do. Oh. It's all this energy.
All of this. Outward. I spend a lot more time in like selfish thoughts and worrying about myself.
Good to notice.
Yeah, good to notice. It's all data. Grist for the mill. Great. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I'm sure we could talk about that a lot more, but we'll wrap it up there for now. And we'll see everybody next week.
See you later.
Thanks for being here. Please like, follow, and subscribe. And if anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, please share with somebody that you care about. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.